Gareth Southgate's 26-man England squad. The question is, who is going to the World Cup this November? There's been a few injuries that have come up for England that have made it difficult. There's been injuries for everyone, and it's going to make life difficult. But what do I think is the best 26-man squad England can take to the World Cup? Of course, Gareth Southgate will have his own mind of his own, and no doubts we will start with the five at the back with Maguire, Stones, and Walker on that first game. So, as you can see on your screens right now, we have the England players who pretty much should thereabouts be in the talk of who is going to play for England in the World Cup this summer. As you can see, the players that are in yellow are a doubt. For example, Walker and Phillips, they are both injury doubts. Phillips obviously hasn't played very much football whatsoever since signing for Manchester City, and Walker is just coming back from an injury as well. Ivan Toney has that weird gambling thing that he's got going on at this current moment in time, which is obviously difficult. And then, as you can see, the red players as well are those that will be missing. So unfortunately, these players won't be included in the squad whatsoever. So as you can see, these are all of the players. As you can imagine, it's Gareth Southgate. It's absolutely packed out in this defence, and I am aware I've put Walker in twice here because he can either play at right back or right wing back.
Sometimes my genius it's almost frightening.
And if we go over to this screen, then what we have here is the players that I think are pretty much nailed on to be going. We'll go through these straight away then. So the three goalkeepers. Unfortunately for Dean Henderson, I think there's no chance of him getting into this. Pickford and Everton have been fantastic defensively. Pope is on the rise and on the way up with Newcastle, and Ramsdale is playing in the current number one team in the Premier League in Arsenal. So I don't think there's any way that I can justify putting anyone else in goal and putting Dean Henderson in. Despite him being a good goalkeeper, he's currently playing for Nottingham Forest, who are at the bottom of the league, and it's just not justifiable. Then the rest of these sort of staple players who I think have to be going in the 26-man squad: Trippier, Stones, Dyer and Shaw. Perfect. And then you've got three across midfield in terms of Bellingham, Rice and Mount. Bellingham and Rice, I think, to be honest, will be starting in the team. And then these four up front, which of course Saka, Sterling, Foden and Kane. Gareth Southgate loves them all to bits, and no doubts that they will be in this squad. That puts us onto 14 players straight away, which means we've got 12 players to discuss. Let us know who you would put in your squad. So let's go to the defenders. We'll start off with the central defenders. We'll leave left back until right at the end because I think that's a difficult one, and it's one of those where you've got to weigh up when you've got your players in the squad. We'll start with defenders. As I mentioned earlier, Walker is injured, or is coming back from an injury, so I think provided he actually comes back for some of the group stage games, I think Kyle Walker will be on the plane, and whether he plays at right back or right centre back, I'm not overly bothered. I think the recovery runs he makes at right centre back will be able to maybe get a potential Trent Alexander-Arnold out of jail if you were to pick him. I do think that is a big bonus, and I think he's experienced enough now as well to potentially even captain the side if Harry Kane or someone like a Jordan Henderson was injured. Next in defenders, then let's go through the rest of them. We've got Ben White, Joe Gomez, Connor Cody, Mark Gehi, Lewis Dunk, Tomori, Byrne and Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire I'm going to stay well clear of. Look out! Just because I don't think he's been good enough. I know Gareth Southgate is most likely to take him. In terms of a left centre-back, as you can see, I've picked pretty much a five at the back, if you will. In terms of a left centre-back, then, I would have to go with Fikayo Tomori. I think Tomori, despite him having a couple of wobbles in terms of the games against Chelsea in the Champions League, you've got to be a very good player to be a starting centre-half for a Serie A side, and the side that won the Serie A last season. So I do think there's definitely talent in there. It might just take him a little bit of time to adjust and acclimatise back to Premier League, but it also might suit him a little bit better as well, of course, playing against some other players who maybe don't feature in the Premier League as frequently either. So that puts us onto four centre-backs, of course, with Stones and Dyer included. Stones is potentially still coming back from an injury, but it looks like he will be back and ready to rumble for that first game. But Eric Dyer could not displace him one bit. He's been fantastic for Spurs. Next up then, what we have is we're going to pick one more centre-back at this current moment in time, and then we'll decide on a later one when we come back through these players. The other one, and I'll go with an obvious one, has to be Ben White for me. I'm putting him on this right-hand side here with Stones and Walker because for me there is no doubt that Ben White will be playing at centre-half. centre-half, but with the option there to play with a 3 at the back, having played at right back all season, or for a big part of the season for Arsenal this year, it definitely is an option for us, particularly with a few injury worries in the wide areas. Let's move on though, and let's move on to centre midfield and central defensive midfield. As you can see here, these are my suggestions who I think will be there. Calvin Phillips, I'm tempted to say I think Gareth Southgate will take him, but I wonder if it's a bit of a risk taking a player who hasn't featured for Manchester City and has been injured for a long time with that shoulder injury. If he's going to be a prominent feature like he was in the Euros, it is a massive, massive risk for him to play. As a result of that, we've got James Ward-Prowse, Henderson and Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and for me, therefore, the first player has to be Jordan Henderson. Obviously, he can play in that holding midfield role if you want him to, maybe not his best position, but he can play there if there is a knock or an injury to Declan Rice, which is massively, massively important. Moving on then, and we'll move to attacking midfield, because we'll get to that James Ward-Prowse versus Loftus-Cheek discussion in a second, and we have to go with James Maddison. I think despite Leicester's poor start to this season, we have to go with James Maddison, and the reason I say that is because of the creativity coming from, deeper roots, if you will.
What do you mean by that?
I think the big criticism of England over the last few months has been they don't look creative enough in front of goal, or a lot of the options are coming from those wide players, and if those wide players, particularly when Reece James isn't playing, who is so good at creating chances, if they aren't creating chances, who's going to create chances? The wingers, they do a very good job at running and dribbling, but the actual chance creation seems to be a little bit quiet in an England shirt. But in terms of someone who you can bring on the pitch, will be a good set piece taker and will create opportunities, I don't think there's too many better players in this England setup. So that puts us on to 19 players, and we'll move on to our attackers. Unlike Gareth Southgate, I want to make sure that we get in as much of the attacking talent as possible, and that we're not bottom heavy with loads and loads of defenders. And first of all, we're going to go and let's have a look at the left wingers. So the left wingers I've highlighted here, of course I've put Sterling on that right hand side, but he can play on the left hand side as well. And then you've got Rashford, obviously Foden, who I've put in as a staple player, Eze, Barnes,
It's an equaliser,
and Grealish.
Hello.
And to go straight away, I think we have to go with Marcus Rashford. He's turned it round a little bit this season and he looks a lot better. Player of the month in August, of course, for Manchester United. And I think if you're going to take Kane and you're potentially going to take an Abraham or a Dominic Calvert-Lewin or a Ivan Toney, whoever, I think you need someone a little bit different who can play through that middle. Rashford, of course, can play off the left-hand side, but then he can play through the middle. If we need something a little bit different going into those final 20 minutes of a game, bring on Rashford. He'll run the defenders ragged, and he's a little bit different. He's not that target man. He likes to get the ball down, and probably potentially a bit more technical as well. The next player then I have to go with is Jack Grealish as well. I know that Miguel Almiron has been making him look like an absolute idiot following his comments last season, but Grealish, there's definitely something about him, and I think we're just lacking it at the moment. We're just missing something. The backup striker, like I mentioned, you come across here and you look at the talent. You've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, of course, who's trying to get himself back firing, trying to get him properly up to speed with Everton. You've got Tammy Abraham, who maybe hasn't hit the ground running this season as he did last season for Roma, and then Ivan Toney, as I mentioned earlier on, who has that betting scandal that's just under his nose, which I think to me leads to being a natural conclusion that, and I wouldn't have said this a few weeks ago, but considering the form he's in, go with Callum Wilson. My worry of injuries is with Callum Wilson is eliminated because we do then have Marcus Rashford, and we have players that can fill in if Kane gets injured and Wilson were to get injured. He does have a poor injury record, Callum Wilson, but he's in form. Why not take him, see what he can do? It's a big move, it's potentially a bold move, but who knows, Callum Wilson might be the one. Right, let's fill in then some of the blanks here. We've used 23 of our squad so far, which leaves us with 3 players left, and I'm going to go in with a 2-yard tap in here, and we're going to put Trent Alexander-Arnold in. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Trent Alexander-Arnold will start, but I think it's impossible not to take him. If we're playing at a 5 at the back with Walker in there, having Trent as a wing back would be absolutely fine, and we can't really sniff at not taking a full back. Speaking of players who can play in full back, and unfortunately I'm going to end the Loftus-Cheek versus James Ward-Prowse discussion before it's even started. I'm going to go with James.
That counts as a try.
I'm going to go with Ruben Loftus-Cheek. And the reason I say that is because with James Ward-Prowse, don't get me wrong, I think he's brilliant on the ball, he's very creative, he's obviously great from set pieces. But when you look at the rest of this squad, you've got Maddison, you've got Trippier, you've got Trent as well, who can all take free kicks and all create from there. Obviously, you've got Saka now on penalties, Kane on penalties, you've got Rashford to take penalties. I think his top skills are therefore a little bit eliminated. And I think what we then need is a ball-playing midfielder. And Ruben Loftus-Cheek is very good. He has great ball skills. He can move the ball around really, really well, and of course he can fill in at right wing back. We've seen him do it for Chelsea this year. It wouldn't be ideal to play him there, same with Trent playing in midfield, but if there is for some unforeseen reason this injury crisis continues, then we've definitely got the option to play him there, and that's why I think he just gets his nose in. So I think I'm complete there with my right wingers, strikers and left wingers, which unfortunately does mean that the likes of Eberechi Eze, Harvey Barnes, Jadon Sancho as well, and Jarrod Bowen will all miss out this year. But what I'm then going to do is I'm going to look at these centre halves. Obviously we've got White, Joe Gomez potentially could be a player, but obviously he's injury prone. Then you've got Dunk, Gehi, Cody, Byrne and Maguire. In terms of this final selection then, I'm going to go with Dan Burn, and it might be a little bit rogue. I know he's obviously been playing well for Newcastle this season. He can play at centre back, he can play at left wing back, and he can play at left back, and we've seen him do all of those for Brighton in recent. And again, when we're that short of left backs or top quality left backs, definitely think it's something that needs to be considered. Is yes, he's not agile, he's not quick, but he can put in a shift in those areas if needs be. Good on the ball, can get the ball down, and he will do a decent job. And that is all that we really need and require. And of course, we've not got too many players really, obviously with Harry Maguire not going, who would feature in that left centre-half role. And if you look there, you know, Tomori, if he's maybe not playing well, bring in Dan Burn and just get him to be relaxed, chill out, and slow down the play for England. So we go on to our final player, and of course you look at left backs, we are a little bit light at left back, but then the question is, if we've got Dan Burn who can be a full-back replacement, and you've got Trippier as well as Trent and Walker, Trippier will come over and cover that position. Do we need someone like a James Justin who can play either side? Gareth Southgate knows him to play in there. I'm not too sure either, which is why I think we then bring a little bit of a wild card. And then who is your wild card? Do you go with Eze or Barnes, or do you go with Bowen or Sancho, or do you then go with James Ward-Prowse? And I think I go with the obvious one, and I think this is an obvious one, and I go with Jadon Sancho. And I know James Ward-Prowse is a fantastic footballer, but I just can't make the room in here for him. I would prefer to pack that front line, take lots of talent who can play in lots of different areas. If we get to the stages where we did last year with Italy in the final and we need to make some big changes, we need real talent who's played at the top level. James Ward-Prowse is a real talent, but he's not played in the Champions League. Yes, if he did play for one of these big six sides, I'm sure he would get more of a shout, and I'm sure he'd probably get in there alongside Henderson, but it is that lack of Champions League, Europa League quality or playing that we have seen for him, which is why Jadon Sancho, who is someone who's obviously represented England before, he's played for Borussia Dortmund, he knows what it means to miss a penalty, and of course he's playing for Manchester United, and I think that's why it would be so important. He has that diversity to play on the left hand side. I wouldn't pack out on full-backs, I would pack out on players who could do a job if that was the case, and I think if you look at this side, we have that absolutely covered in abundance. So if you have enjoyed this video, do be sure to smash that like button. Let us know your side. How would your 26-man squad set up? Let us know, and let us know where you think England are going to finish in the World Cup this time around. Thank you for watching, and as always guys, stay safe. Cheers.